What is dyscalculia? You have probably heard of dyslexia, but have you also heard of dyscalculia? Comparable to dyslexia, dyscalculia is a specific learning disability. However, instead of affecting reading, it impairs people's potential to understand numbers and basic numerical information, which has a lasting effect on their ability to learn mathematics. Dyscalculia is a relatively common condition, which affects about 5% of the population, or 1 in 20 people. This means there will likely be at least one child with dyscalculia in each school class, and it is equally common among boys and girls. Many people find maths tricky, have low confidence in their maths abilities, or feel anxious about maths. However, this doesn't necessarily mean they have dyscalculia. Some people may develop mathematics difficulties for other reasons. For example, because they do not have access to good education, they do not speak the language of education well, or they miss a lot of time from school. Additionally, people with intellectual disabilities, mental, neurological, sensory, or motor disorders may also have difficulties with mathematics. However, this is not the same as dyscalculia. So, how is dyscalculia defined? Dyscalculia involves persistent and severe difficulties with numbers and numerical concepts, which are present from a young age and will persist despite adequate education and access to specialist support. Not all people with dyscalculia have exactly the same type and severity of difficulties. One reason for this is that dyscalculia often co-occurs with other developmental conditions, such as dyslexia, language and communication problems, or ADHD. Nevertheless, there are specific problems associated with dyscalculia. Let's see what these are. It's important to consider that some issues are likely to be present even before children start school and learn about numbers. These include problems with following sequential instructions or learning to perform new movement sequences, such as getting dressed independently or putting together different parts of a toy. In school-age children, typical areas of difficulty include problems with reading and writing numbers, doing basic arithmetic, learning multiplication tables, understanding place values, working with decimals and fractions, logical reasoning, and solving word problems. Additionally, children with dyscalculia may also use inefficient strategies when they do maths. Outside of the classroom, children with dyscalculia may also have trouble using calendars and clocks, recalling the order of past events, playing traditional board games with dice, keeping track of scores during sports games, and they may confuse left and right. However, as dyscalculia is a developmental condition, typical difficulties may also change with age. In adults, in addition to struggles with calculations, typical problems may include difficulties with planning and managing time, problems with estimating costs and financial values, difficulties with reading maps, and getting lost easily. You may be wondering, why do some people develop dyscalculia, whilst others do not? Although some environmental reasons, such as socio-economic disadvantage, may increase the risk of dyscalculia, genetic factors play a major role too. This means that people with dyscalculia are likely to have close relatives with dyscalculia or other developmental conditions, as a risk for developing dyscalculia is passed on from parents to children. These genetic factors can influence the way the brain develops, which can impact areas associated with mathematical learning, amongst others. Why is it important to diagnose dyscalculia? Dyscalculia is a lifelong condition, and it doesn't just go away when children finish school or grow older. Early diagnosis of dyscalculia is particularly important because children with dyscalculia often miss basic knowledge about numbers, which is necessary to learn more complex topics later. Additionally, without specialist support, children may not be able to develop efficient strategies to deal with their mathematics problems and everyday difficulties. This can lead to frustration and negative attitudes towards mathematics and school in general, which can make it difficult to engage children in interventions at a later stage. Moreover, undiagnosed dyscalculia can lead to low self-esteem, anxiety, and depression. This is why diagnosis should be a top priority so that relevant support can be provided. Are there any tips for parents and teachers? Some tools and adjustments can help children with dyscalculia to reach their full potential. These may include using everyday objects, such as beads or tokens, which can be useful for demonstrating simple number concepts and supporting memory. Additionally, it is helpful to allow extra time for assessments, offer partial solutions, or present multiple choice questions instead of open-ended questions, and use assistive technology such as dyscalculia-friendly calculators. Computer-based maths programs and apps can also be useful for repeated practice of arithmetic and times tables. If a child is struggling to understand basic maths concepts, appropriate intervention may mean going back several years in the curriculum, instead of focusing on age-appropriate content. Assessing children's memory, attention, and verbal abilities can also help with finding appropriate strategies and methods of teaching and learning. These are just some examples, and effective interventions may look different for each person. Are there any tips for people with dyscalculia? Although dyscalculia can lead to a variety of difficulties, people with dyscalculia can still succeed in other subjects, including literacy, arts, and science. A diagnostic assessment can be useful in identifying specific cognitive strengths and weaknesses, which, in turn, can help with developing personalised strategies for mathematical learning. People with dyscalculia may also come up with their own strategies to help them in day-to-day life or when learning. For example, they may use visual aids like Play-Doh to help with numeracy, or play a song that is 3 minutes long when they need to complete a task in 3 minutes, instead of using a stopwatch. Although dyscalculia is a lifelong condition, it does not mean that people with dyscalculia, including adults, cannot improve their math skills. It is never too late to learn more about dyscalculia or to seek specialist assessment and support to fully develop one's potential.